Coming up on Added Time.
You know, you don't think that Zidane and Ronaldo and all of these guys are the very best players in the world. You know, they also got very, very big egos.
Trent Alexander-Arnold's reception, if he plays, is what?
Slot loses a few games, all of a sudden he should be sacked. Alexander-Arnold does this, all of a sudden he's the worst human in the world.
Like he's just learned the Wi-Fi password at Real Madrid. His feet's barely under the desk.
If you're paying him £100,000 a week, you still got to pay him £100,000 a week.
We would prefer that Ange was still there, and you know, you can't compare the football.
Is that fair?
Whether it's fair or not is irrelevant, to be honest.
Boys, usually we start in England, not today. We're going to start in Madrid.
Good week to do so, yeah.
Real Madrid. So your man, Foz, you've loved what he's done for football and what he stands for. Vinicius Jr.
I'm not sure I always love what he stands for, but yeah, I love him as a player, yeah.
Yeah. But
he has had to fight back against racism and all that.
That's what I mean.
That's very true.
But the issue that he's having at the moment, and it's a clear issue, with Xabi Alonso and Vinny, like all good players, believes that he should be playing 90 minutes of every game, but he's not. Where does it stand at the moment? And they've got a huge week, obviously, Real Madrid. We'll see him in the Champions League on stand against Liverpool.
Well, they had a huge win as well over the weekend. Again, that's most important for Xabi Alonso, of course. It's always a massive job for him, and you know, you go into a club like that where you have big personalities. I mean, you know, you don't think that Zidane and Ronaldo and all of these guys are the very best players in the world. You know, they also got very, very big egos, and managing them, particularly when they're in a group, is not easy. It takes a certain level of quality and skill. So far, Xabi Alonso's getting it right. The most important thing is he keeps the results going, in which case it takes all the pressure off, right? As soon as results start to go bad at any point, for any coach, all of a sudden the questions are raised, and then when there's fissures between, you know, big players, which Vinny Jr. is, and, you know, a relatively young coach, a relatively inexperienced coach actually at that level, then all of a sudden they can use that, and their agents use that, and the media can get on that. So at the moment, the results have been fantastic for Xabi, aside from the Atletico Madrid game. They're clearly on top, doing well, 4-0 on the weekend, and he's in the box seat, if you like. And important for him is that he remains there. For Vinny Jr., Rodrigo had the same stuff last week. This is the nature of managing one of the top clubs in the world. You saw Ancelotti was always very good at it, but it's not that he didn't have these issues. Yeah. Rodrigo wanted away at one point. You know, and it's impossible to keep a team with so many big stars completely happy. It's just not going to work. So, you know, it's an issue he knew he was walking into. Obviously, so far, he's done a very good job of managing it, and we'll see.
Boz, history tells us that when an experienced manager has an issue with the big ego of a player, the big ego of the player generally has to go elsewhere. However, in this occasion, as Foz points out, Xabi Alonso's, like, he's just learnt the Wi-Fi password at Real Madrid. His feet's barely under the desk. What about that in a setting like Real Madrid, where they're used to having, let's face it, the biggest names in the world?
Yeah, they are, and it really comes down to, like Foz just said, the results. That's gonna swing it one way or the other, because this is a little. It's not a crack yet, but it's just a little vision of it. Because if the results turn around, this is the one that's going to start to open up. Okay, so we've seen that before at big clubs, and the bottom line is there is no bigger club in terms of trophies won than, as we know, Real Madrid. And we've seen them sack managers before, even when they've won things as well. Yeah. So he knows, Xabi Alonso knows, regardless of the support that he's getting, or he did at the beginning, if those results start to slip, then that's when there'll be issues. It's quite simple. In terms of the way he's played, I mean, he's got like 5 goals in La Liga, 4 assists, Vinny Jr. It's not as if he's not doing, no bad at all. He's the second highest ranked players ranking in terms of his performances on the park. But every time a new manager comes to a club, usually they do focus on somebody that they just don't like them. For whatever reason, they don't like them. And like I said, if the results remain like they are, Xabi Alonso will be fine. If they start to change, which they might do, they've got a massive game, as we know, live on Stan Sport on Wednesday morning in the Champions League. That's an absolutely huge game. So
and last time
that's what we'll tell.
Leverkusen got absolutely flogged because Real Madrid, right? It's very different.
With Xabi Alonso.
Sorry, can I just add something to that as well?
Yeah.
So the thing about it is, so for coaches walking into that environment, the most skilled ones usually, what they're trying to avoid is it becoming a mano war for power. Right? And of course the other thing about Barcelona and Real Madrid is they're deeply political clubs. Right? They're member-based clubs where people are elected, and you see Florentino Perez in the past.
The president is all powerful.
Right, and he goes to get a new player behind Ancelotti's back. He does that work in order for the club, which in a sense I don't mind too much. So the skill of a manager at the very highest level seems to me to be able to manage a group, all of these massive personalities. Vinny Jr. is doing great, and that's the beauty for Alonso, because he's used him as a substitute sometimes, and he's doing well. So from Xabi Alonso's perspective, it's working for the team and working for the club, which is most important. Well, it's actually
he
working.
Might not realise it, but he feels like it's not working for him because he wants to play more.
That's exactly, and he's used to doing that there. And he also, pre-Mbappe, he was the number one. So there's this whole adjustment that's going on, because Mbappe's absolutely flying. He's got 18 goals in all competitions so far. I think he's got 13 and 11. It just shows the complexity of managing at that level. But what Ancelotti was brilliant at doing was not creating head-to-heads where it's my authority against yours. Somehow just able to diffuse situations which do come up regularly, and that's part of skill, part of personality, and not everyone has it.
What happens, Boz, when a manager starts to, and not saying Xabi Alonso's doing this, he looks actually quite the opposite. He's got his way, and it's like, guys, it's my way, or you can go and find something else to do. What happens, though, when a manager starts making provisions for a player's personality, i.e., oh, that's all right, I understand, but I won't make you do this, or I won't make you do that, training, pitch, or in a game? What ends up happening?
Well, it depends on the player and depends how he performs. If it's someone like, let's say, Zidane, and it also depends on the other personalities in the team. Me personally, and a lot of managers I played under, I'm sure would go, he can do it, because he is that good. And in all fairness, he is that good. But once the player stops doing what makes him that good, then you're going to get people, not only in the dressing room, but the management team going, well, maybe we can't make so much allowances. Really, I think it's a storm in the teacup. No problem when players are disappointed when they come off. Okay, if they go a little bit too far, but we've seen this before. And we've also seen a very similar situation now with Liverpool. And on the weekend, Arne Slot made a really, I believe, a brave and brilliant decision to go back to what made them successful, and left basically all the major signings out with the exception of Ekitike. And you saw the result. They Salah was back, scores a goal, his 250th goal.
Bit of help from your mate, Emmy.
Well, okay, but it doesn't matter. And they had a bit of luck too. Morgan Rogers hit the post early on, but he left them all out because he knows, doesn't matter. I used to explain this to certain chairmen over here as well when they talk about big signings, and they used to say, look, if the manager happens to decide that big signing either doesn't start, is on the bench, doesn't make any difference to the transfer fee you have to pay. There's no amendment in the contract that says if he doesn't play, we don't get this.
It's not prorated.
It doesn't make it. If you're paying him £100,000 a week, you still got to pay him £100,000 a week. The most important thing is that he wins, right? Because he wins, meaning the manager and the team, you win.
Everyone wins.
Okay, so that's an important thing to take in. And like I said, it's a storm in the teacup at the moment because the results have been so good, with the exception of the Atletico game, But they've been exceptional for. They won the Clasico, but this is a huge game coming up against Liverpool.
Because our English audience who are exposed only to Real Madrid really when they play Champions League games like the one this week.
Or El Clasico.
They're going to. Chances are that they're very much going to bump into more English teams as this Champions League goes on. The way that Xabi Alonso has changed because we sat there Champions League last year. It was like, okay, they lose the ball and then teams could play through them. Arsenal, case in point. So how has Xabi Alonso changed it, and does it set them up for ultimate success as this competition goes on, Foz?
It could do. It should do. Whether they win it, that's another matter. So you got some other unbelievably good teams. But I think the whole difference with Alonso, he has a very clear picture of the way he wants to play. He wants them to play that way all the time. He's going to plug in the players who work in that system. That's why you see Arda Güler now really growing. I mean, under Ancelotti, if Ancelotti was still there, in my view, there's no way that he would be playing so regularly as he is, because that's the player that he needs in that system of play. So he's very consistent in what he wants. He's very clear on that, and he's very strong on it as well. And there's no, grey areas, right? Which, is good. It's very different for Real Madrid. If you look at most of their winning managers, for example, Mourinho, who was very variable according to what the opponent offered, but often very reactive. Even if you look at Zidane, was hugely successful, particularly in the Champions League and in La Liga. And he was a coach who just was, in my view, balanced depending on what he was playing against. He had a marvellous team as well, still with Ronaldo and the like, and Modric at his peak. But he would sometimes just play counter-attack football, sometimes he would step on. So, whereas Alonso is quite an anomaly, I think, for Real Madrid for quite some time. Yeah. He's almost of course, a legendary Real Madrid player, but he's almost more a Barca coach in that sense, right?
There's a clear identity.
He's proactive, very proactive, wants to control the game, wants to do everything that they want to do. So it's quite different for Real Madrid, and I think the problem for him will be if it starts to not go well, you very quickly see people say, oh, this is not for us. At Real Madrid, we're all about winning. It's a bit like what Juventus used to be. Yep. We win. We're not committed to any way of playing. Your job is to make us play in any way that beats that opponent. That's Real Madrid, a kind of raison d'etre.
Ahead of this one, this week, and if you're watching the show or listening to the show after the fact, just take it from the point of view that we're talking before the fixture at Anfield. Trent Alexander-Arnold's reception, if he plays, is what?
Going off end of last season when he was booed, when he was playing in Liverpool colours, unfortunately, I think that it will be exactly the same.
Is that fair?
Whether it's fair or not is irrelevant, to be honest. The fans pay their money as long as it's nothing untoward towards the player, i.e. nothing racist or anything like that, then they're entitled. Yeah, exactly. They're entitled to their opinion. The ironic thing, I think, out of all the sort of reasons that we've made for Liverpool's poor run, which obviously ended on the weekend, one of the main ones is the fact that Trent Alexander is not there. You don't miss somebody until they're gone, as the saying goes. So whether or not he plays, we know Valverde is taking up that right back spot. Carvajal is going to be out injured till January. So whether or not he starts, he didn't start on the weekend in their 4-0 win against Valencia. So we don't know whether or not he will start, but I wouldn't surprise me at all. Like I said, going off the last time that he basically said he was going to go, that he does get booed.
Foz, is he going to cop it from the cop? I was itching to say that.
Oh, well, I hope not. I think Boz is right in saying, well, fans have a right to have, whatever their views are, but that doesn't mean we have to agree. Yeah. But it's not a question of whether it's fair or otherwise, just a question of whether they possess it. I don't. I think, he had every right to do what he did. I think he's a marvellous servant for the club. I think he did an unbelievable job for them. I think he brought them back as part of that group, brought them back to success under Klopp. And if I was a fan, I'd be saying it's unbelievable what he did for the club. And plus, the reason I think it might be different, I don't know, I'm not a Liverpool fan, but it might be different is because I think, to Boz's point, I think that the Liverpool fans now realise actually how good he was. And this is a bit like where football is at the moment, like where it's quicker to be critical than ever before. Yeah. The cycle is much quicker. So Slot loses a few games, all of a sudden he should be sacked. Alexander-Arnold does this, all of a sudden he's the worst human in the world. Yeah. But then over time you see that winding back. This coach is horrible, has to be sacked, and then all of a sudden there are people looking back and go, well, actually it wasn't that bad. This is football now.
Still to come on Added Time.
I lost 90 minutes of my life in that game against Chelsea. I'll never get back, and that was horrific.
Foz's striking grey-on-grey ensemble that he wore to the races. Thoughts?
There will be a Trivial Pursuit question in about 30 years.
What word would describe them? I would have just said maybe effective.
It's a miracle Ruben Amorim has survived the year. Spurs. Now, not saying that Ange Postecoglou is going to lob back in North London this season, but Spurs under Thomas Frank so far are what?
I think they've been okay. I actually think they've been okay. as good a away record in the Premier League as anyone. Difficulties at home. They won their opening game in the Premier League at home, and since then they haven't won a game at home, only the League Cup against Doncaster, and I think it's Villarreal Champions League game. Obviously that's a lot to do with the pressure of playing in front of very demanding fans who understandably expect a lot. Yeah. The other thing I think as well, which I think you need to take into consideration, they haven't got a good record against Chelsea. We're going off the back of the Chelsea game. And it's ironic because when you think, until you sort of go into it, you dig a little bit deeper. Yeah. When you think the best away record, you think, oh, that's because teams come onto them. Okay, the game against Chelsea did come onto them. The big struggle was, once again, ironically, and this is what I think they get caught in between two stools of how to play, their refusal to go over the top. Yeah. Okay, sometimes you can go through a team, sometimes you go around a team, other times you have to go over the top. And we've seen that. We've seen that before Manchester City. We saw it again on the weekend with Haaland. With Haaland, another 2 goals for him, which makes it 16 goals and 2 assists in 18 games, which is amazing, but it's another story. And
well, João Pedro's goal, case in point. They tried to play through twice.
Well, Mickey van der Ven and Xabi Simons got caught out trying to play out the back. And listen, Chelsea should have scored 3 or 4.
Yeah. And Villa did the same.
And the record against Chelsea is not good. There's no doubt about that. But there's definitely a psychological problem at home. The away record explains it, because still, at the end of the day, after 10 games, they're still in 5th position.
Yeah. It's not a disaster.
It's not a disaster. So I said it's been okay. And if they keep on, they've got Copenhagen at home in the Champions League, should win that game. And then they've got the huge one before the international break against Manchester United, which that'll be a huge test, because Manchester United are playing well at the moment. And once again, that game is at home. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they do.
Where are they?
So you said what word would describe them? I would have just said maybe effective, right? Because he was sitting in 3rd. It's true that their record at home against Chelsea in the last few years is horrible, and so that wasn't a huge surprise, except the fact that they were absolutely turgid in the way they played. You couldn't play less football in an attacking sense than what they played against Chelsea, and I think the fans are rightly, a lot of them. I just said that social media is very quick to condemn. That's true, but it's also, I think, rightly saying, okay, that might have been your plan, but that is just horrendous to watch. And you attempt to do that, right? So, he's known for, they knew what they were getting. He's known for, a balanced approach to the game. He's not someone who always goes attack. He doesn't always defend. He tries to find what he thinks is the right balance. That worked at a smaller club. I think now's a good test for him. It's been a really very good start to the season in terms of results. Now, is when the middle part of the season is where other teams can improve, now start to become more effective. Chelsea, with a bad pre-season, start to ramp up. Manchester City look like they're getting in a bit of a rhythm now. Liverpool might have found the solutions. So I think the next 10 or 12 weeks is going to be really a test for Thomas Frank. But obviously we would prefer that Ange was still there, and you can't compare the football, but I'm sure the club is saying, okay, well, they have to give it a tick so far.
Yeah. Social media gets another mention here, and it's something that was put out on social media by a fan, is Jed Spence and also Mickey van der Ven just walking straight past Thomas Frank at full time. There's more to the story than just the pictures that you see right there. However, that's a situation that now needs to be managed, where ordinarily, if that's not picked up, you don't even have to worry about it. It just points towards a dissatisfied dressing room.
We may found out something very different. My call on looking at it, I'm sure Thomas Frank said to them, go over to the fans and clap them. And I'm sure in the disappointment of defeat that it was Mickey van der Ven mainly who said he wasn't going to do it. I think Jed Spence has followed. So I think that's all it was. And in terms of dressing room discontent, the bottom line is, in my opinion, it's up to each individual player. I would, no matter how bad you feel, you should always go clap your supporters, but everyone's different. If somebody didn't want to go and do that, so far as I'm concerned, I'll be like,
don't you just cop dogs abuse if you lose a game that you should have won?
Well, that doesn't matter if you cop dogs abuse or not.
Like in your day, did you ever cop it?
Well, but it doesn't matter. You should go and clap your supporters. That's just my opinion, but everyone's different. It may come out that it was something different. We don't know. But it wasn't a good look, put it that way. But I'm sure he said go and clap the supporters, and especially Mickey van der Ven basically shook his hands. Again, that may have been the disappointment of losing, and also may have been the fact that they felt as they copped it in the game as well. So if you've copped it in the game as well from the fans, and then somebody's asking you to go and clap them, everyone's different. They want to say no. Yeah, and this comes back to what I'm saying to you about the psychological thing at playing at home. It's a very demanding club. They're very demanding supporters.
Too demanding?
Saw that. Oh, I don't think so. Because
we're telling people how to think here.
No, I don't think so, because for so long they've had to live in Arsenal's shadow.
Yeah.
They've got a stadium which is as good as any in the world. Regardless of what anyone says, they do spend a lot of money. Okay, so and if you look at that starting lineup on the weekend, people were saying beforehand there was only 15 players. Well, that starting lineup was a very good starting lineup, and the record against Chelsea is not good enough, really. But this has been going for a long time, the Chelsea record. So I can understand it. I can understand their expectations, and they will turn around and say to you, and I don't know this. Somebody can check this, but I'm sure you'll find their season tickets are as high as anywhere, and in which case they're entitled to say, well, hang on a minute, we're paying as much as anyone, so we want a little bit better than that.
Well, it wasn't long ago where Pochettino had him in second place and was leading the Premier League, and then they finished third. I think he finished fifth one year and so on. So they have the resources. They have spent a lot of resources. They're among Europe's biggest spenders in the last 10 years, actually, and therefore they should be doing better than what they're doing by now. But now they've made changes that, Daniel Levy's gone and otherwise, and you're just going to have to see what these new management and football team, what their strategy is. I don't know. The thing about it is it was a bad look because, whether they want to go clap the fans, which I think is a wonderful part of football culture in England, actually. There is a real sense that is part of their long-standing football culture that the fans that the players recognise what the fans give.
Yeah.
And that they have to acknowledge that.
Were you ever reluctant to go over and say,
I
even
was
if
never
you
reluctant, no.
copped it?
No.
They gave you advice, though, no doubt, if it was a disappointing result.
I mean, if you lost, you lost. Fair enough.
Part of
The
it.
thing is, the players understand that, but at the same time, they're spending their money. As a player that they're there, and that they're the heart of the club, and that is the reality. So, if those guys don't agree with the tactics, or even if they're fighting with them, I don't think it's the right time. Get in the dressing room and say whatever it is that you need to say to him, to the coach. But on the field in that moment, to me, it's a bad look for everyone. I don't know. We don't know him obviously, but Thomas Frank, it's not my football. I wouldn't have appointed him. But having said that, he seems like a reasonable human being. I quite like the way that he talks, very normally, naturally, just explains things quite well. There's not a lot of hyperbole. I can see why he did well at a smaller club. I think he's someone that the players would have a lot of affinity with, but it is different at a bigger club. The expectations are much higher. I think part of those expectations on the players, though, is if you're disagreeing, you do it back there, not in front of not just your fans, their fans, but actually the whole world.
They just feel like, just briefly on Spurs, they just feel like a place where they're looking for the little ingredient that sends them up and consistently top four, on the verge of a title, but no one in the building seems to be
they were there.
Totally sure
they were actually
of
there.
what that ingredient is.
Yeah, well, like Foz said, they were there. Yeah. They were regular top fours, let's be honest. And look, it gets overlooked a lot, but I don't think it should. They did lose Harry Kane.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, one of the best players, not just at their club, not just in the world.
Yeah.
And that season, they still did come fifth. But remember the season before under Antonio Conte, it was eighth. Last season, 17th. And I keep saying this to people, when you have a season like that in the league, they won the trophy, of course, right? But 17th, then to making that jump back to where you should be, it's not easy.
No.
It's not an easy.
Like you're falling off the ladder.
Right now, that's what I said. I said to my friend who was a Tottenham supporter. So right now, you're fifth still.
Yeah.
Okay, I know there's a few teams there on 17 points, all the way down to 8th, Manchester United. But it is not the worst thing in the world. But
third to 11th is one win.
Yeah, but don't think you're going to go from 17th position, regardless of who's in charge, all of a sudden to being title candidates. It doesn't work like that. Well, very rarely. Very rarely does it that.
So I know you want to move on. I just want to add the last point is, football has changed a lot, and I think from what I can see, like West Ham and Spurs are a particularly good example of, we have a history of playing well, and I remember the Spurs Hoddle you know, and Archibald and that team when I was growing up were fantastic. I used to watch them. But it seems like they want to be committed to attacking football, but when that doesn't, you know, when the results don't go well for a period of time playing that way, they're really not that committed to it, or at least a large section of their fans, right? So I think they're a bit confused in that way. It's like, you know, if you want to play that way and that's the history of your club and you want to bring it to life, well, bring it to life. But, you know, it might not work every week. But you've got to make a decision as a club as to whether you want to have balanced coaches like Thomas Frank, which means it's going to change every week. It may or may not work. Sometimes it's very bad to watch, and it was absolutely horrific to watch. You know, I lost 90 minutes of my life in that game against Chelsea. I'll never get back, and that was horrific, right? Right? Whereas, or you're going to go the other way, and you had a coach in Ange who was going to go and do this, and at least you had some excitement. Obviously, last year was disastrous in terms of the league. Or, you know, you've got to make a selection. But these clubs are very typical. It's not just Spurs; they're all over the place. It's like, let's just get the newest coach who we think's going to do something. And when it doesn't work, everyone's saying, "Oh, we'd prefer attacking football." Then you get attacking football. Now, well, we don't. This is a bit too attacking. You know, it's crazy.
He's only 10 games in. They're obviously trying to find a balance. We know about the defensive problems in the last 2 seasons under Ange. They got It's the third best defensive record in the league at the moment, and third best attacking record. So, you know, and they're also playing, as every team is finding out, when you're playing 3 times a week, it's not easy. It really is not. They lost during the week to Newcastle.
Yep.
In the round.
They weren't great against Monaco in their last Champions League.
No, they weren't. Vicario was outstanding, but you know, the games keep coming thick and fast. Even
no rest.
Still to come on Added Time.
I really don't think Manchester United were going to sack him within a year.
Given that Kerr is back, and you saw her goal on the weekend.
Foz's striking grey-on-grey ensemble that he wore to the races. Thoughts?
There will be a Trivial Pursuit question in about 30 years.
I have to say onside, because you can't have a worse start.
Onside, offside.
All right.
Here we go.
All right.
Bozza, to you first. Ruben Amorim, it's just on a year since he was announced as the next Manchester United manager. It's been a quiet time since then. Onside, offside. It's a miracle Ruben Amorim has survived the year.
I know offside. I don't think they were going to sack him within the year. My only fear was that he was going to resign because of the stuff that came out of his mouth. But as we keep saying, remember, English is not his first language, it's a different culture. So he maybe didn't realise the type of context that he was trying to put it in, and it came across a little bit, you could probably say, a little bit more direct than if he had been there long enough to know the nuances of the English language. I really don't think Manchester United were going to sack him within a year. And they're starting to do well. And I've had a good feeling from the start of the season, although there are a lot of doubts. They've shown in the last 4 games what they can do. You know, especially, you have to say, going to Anfield and winning, although in all fairness, people would say it's a good time to play Liverpool during that time when they had a really rough spell, but it no way diminishes in going there and winning. And when you win at places like Anfield, like St James's Park, like the Emirates, like the Etihad, it really does set yourself up because you have that marker to say, if we can do this here, we can do it anywhere.
Exactly. Foz, Sam Kerr's Chelsea has played 7 games this season, 6 wins, no losses, only unbeaten side in the WSL. That team has an invincible season. Onside, offside. Be definitive.
Be definitive, yeah. Well, all right. Well, I'll say offside, although it's very possible, because it's just so difficult to do. But yeah, it's a team. It's one of the few teams in probably the last 5 years in that league that has a genuine chance of doing it. That's true. And given that Kerr is back, and you saw her goal on the weekend,
Great. Sharply
absolutely
taken.
Brilliant goal. You know, if she's back, she's hungry again, and she starts to perform, then there's every reason why they could do it.
Shout out to Ellie Carpenter as well.
Yeah, Ellie's
Player of the
great.
match, goal, 2-0 win over London
Fantastic.
City. So yeah, Chelsea flying in that regard. Bozza, Nottingham Forest conceded from perhaps a wrongfully awarded corner on the weekend.
Not perhaps, it was.
No,
Yeah, it was a wrongly.
Whoa. Chill. Don't ask that question yet. Sean Dyche blew up about it.
He's right.
Yeah, it was wrong.
He was right.
And he's called for VAR to get involved in those calls. Onside, offside, expanding VAR when they can get on involved in a match. Yes or no?
Onside, I would say, for corner calls. That is one instance where, now people, and I will put this as a little caveat in brackets, as long as it doesn't take too much time. I don't want them taking 2 or 3 minutes to whether or not it's a corner or not.
But that's what they said when VAR came in. They
Yeah,
said that
I know,
wouldn't
but
be happening.
that was more for penalties or goals. They're more
Yeah,
definitive. You don't really know what's going to happen from a corner, but it is a dangerous situation. I do feel sorry for him because it was definitely not a corner. But in saying that, overall, I think a draw was a good result. I mean, Murillo cleared one off the line right at the depth.
Yep.
Forest had their chances as well. That is where, you could say, that is where, again, this comes back to the time factor, that, say, you could have a captain's challenge. Like that, that is where somebody could say, hang on a minute, that was not a corner.
They trialled it at the under-20s World Cup.
Yeah, but I don't want to see games going. Sometimes, every time you look at the game, just say you're watching the mini matches, for example, and it gets towards the end of the first half or the second half, when you see it starting to go 50, 52, I don't want to see it going any more.
Not at will.
Yeah, no, well, that's the point. But the thing is, when you say you will, Foz, the thing is, once we saw the replay, right, we saw Anderson shout for the corner, then he sort of like that to the fans, and then he was talking about the corner. But all of a sudden, before the corner's taken, we get a picture. So that was literally 20 seconds later to show it was not a corner. Yeah. So I don't see where the big thing is. We're not talking about sending off, goal or not. It's not definitive because we don't know what's going to happen for a corner. That is where, in my opinion, yes, onside, that they should seriously consider either having a captain's challenge or somebody quickly in the ear just saying, if you're the referee, Adam, by the way, it wasn't a corner.
Fozzie, 10 games into the season, so Vitor Pereira has been relieved of his duties at Wolves. Wolves without a win at the bottom. They know about this position because they were in exactly the same situation 12 months ago. But this time, Wolves will be relegated. Onside, offside?
Well, I have to say onside because you can't have a worse start possibly. But the caveat to that is this, that the things that we don't know is what's going on internally. And so I always put myself in the position, okay, so let's say I'm a football director or I'm the owner of the club. Would I be sacking any coach just on the basis of the results alone? No. But would I be sacking him? Yeah, well, of course.
So he got 3 more years after 4 straight losses.
It's even more ridiculous, that's right. The pain of relegation is so bad these days that, financially and so on, that I think it has accelerated that as well. The other issue is you need to understand what is happening with all the other teams. Like, for example, the promoted teams this season are doing well. So this season will be very different from last season. If you were down there, you'd be saying, oh, okay, hang on, these other 3 are absolutely horrendous. So we've got more time. So there's other factors at play, but also it's all the internal factors, like what's changed within the dressing room. Yeah. How's he responding to the players? All of that changes, and even very good coaches are sometimes in environments in a club where it is not going to work, irrespective of their skills. Sometimes they're just in the wrong environment. That set of players is not responding to that coach for whatever reason. We're always making judgments from the outside, and based purely on the horrendous start to the season, I can see why the decision has been made.
You've copped it so far with these first 2 questions. You're all about looking forward, and I'm asking for definitive answers in the future. So sorry about that, Foz. We'll look briefly back here for Boz and his next question. Obviously, the Melbourne Cup Carnival on the screens of Channel 9 around the country at the moment. Foz was down in Melbourne on Derby Day, spreading the good word of football on stand.
The gospel.
Premier League, yeah, exactly. Onside, offside, Foz's striking grey-on-grey ensemble that he wore to the races. Thoughts on the style?
Onside,
yeah, it was stylish. Yeah, it was very
That's
stylish.
the only suit I got. What do you want?
I
pulled the tag off it in the morning.
That's not true.
No, but I really think going with the same colour tie and the same colour shirt is very fashionable. Always have done.
Yeah. It wasn't as fashionable as the night. Remember the Premier League night we did earlier in the year, and he came in a tuxedo? Now that was James Bond material right there. You remember that?
Yeah,
from a function.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the Melbourne Cup.
No, I'm just saying that he's a stylish guy. Known for this.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
Listen, I don't claim it was fashionable. It's like just
it's fashionable.
That's all I've got.
False. It's fashionable. I'm telling you, it's a good look. Okay, your question now. We'll go back to football, shall
we?
Right.
Okay.
Foz, Champions League, PSG host Bayern Munich. What a game! Two of the best sides in Europe this season. I'm going to change the question that's on the page here. Can you envisage this being a final this season in the Champions League?
You can't say no. I did say before the season, I think Bayern were a potential dark horse. only because given they haven't won it for a few years. But I like what Vincent Kompany's done. I wasn't sure about him. In the early part of last season, we remember in the Champions League they were horrendous at times, including against Celtic. And so I just wasn't sure whether he had the capability. He was at Burnley. Obviously went up, went down. I mean, it's a very big call to go to a club of that size. I like to see the new managers coming through, like him and Jubby, particularly the ones who want to play in a certain way. But I'll tell you what, he's done an amazing job so far this season.
Well, he's not hiding to nothing, because if it works, it's the players.
Exactly.
If it doesn't work, it's him.
Especially at Bayern Munich, again, another really political club, another club with outspoken directors, outspoken former players, and also outspoken players, which I also like about German football.
Yeah.
So, he walked into an environment where you don't want it to go wrong. It's going to go very, very wrong. And he's just done an unbelievable job. The other thing, the reason why the answer to your question is yes, is because both of these teams are dominant in their leagues. They can rest players domestically. They've got a big advantage now. Yeah. And as we've said before, we used to say that being in the French League champions was a disadvantage because the level of the league was not high enough. Enrique's made clear that that's no longer the case. I do think it used to be, but and so now all of a sudden, simply because of the level of his coaching, he's turned them into a machine. So therefore, they could easily go back-to-back this season. That we've seen the quality from them, and Bayern Munich could win. Yeah, so two teams, a fabulous game. In fact, to finish, the answer would be, this would be a very, very worthy final.
Yeah, absolutely. To both of you for the final question in
okay.
onside, offside. So poor old Amara Nallo, he's played 16 minutes of football and also copped 2 red cards in his senior first 2 games of football, 2 red cards. So I'm proposing a rule for FIFA to implement, or UEFA for the rest of the season, that this kid, whenever he plays, he's got to play a few more minutes. There's a moratorium, a 12-month immunity period on more red cards for poor old Amara Nallo.
Well, offside to your idea, or onside, or is it to him getting the red cards?
The idea that he gets immunity.
Nah, offside.
Offside.
Sorry.
Stop doing
Rules are
stupid
rules.
stuff.
Yeah, sorry. He'll be fine. It'll be one of them, but it will be a Trivial Pursuit question in about 30 years, yeah?
If he goes again.
He will, yeah. Even now, yeah. Which Liverpool Academy, you say graduate stroke legend now, started off his career with 2 red cards after 16 combined minutes. That will be it. But he'll learn. Yeah.
Well, the second one wasn't it. The play got past him and he pulled him down. It was
clear goal scoring.
Opportunity, which I think probably the academy coaches and even maybe Slotty's saying, yeah, okay, fair enough. That was the decision you had to make in that time. Yeah. I think it's likely they're not saying, oh, geez, here comes a kid. You've made some really bad decisions. I mean, the attempted tackle, which is what they'd be working on. But I wouldn't be surprised if they say to him, yeah, okay, that's fine. That's not a bad decision in that moment, actually. So let's see. To get there, he must be a very good player.
This has been another Stan Sport production.